My daughter's husband thought I was just an old fool who didn't understand anything. He used to sneak into my room when he thought I was asleep, rummaging through my things, looking for something valuable. But that night, when he opened my drawer to get the keys to the safe, his face first turned white as chalk and then yellow, like egg yolk. What he saw there changed his life forever. And me, I just smiled in the darkness. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you are listening in the comments. The fork froze halfway to my mouth when Charlie's voice cut through our peaceful dinner conversation. So, David, that safe upstairs, what kind of lock does it have? Lauren nearly choked on her water. Charlie, what kind of question is that? But Charlie's eyes stayed fixed on mine, waiting. There was something predatory in his expression that made my chest tighten. I set down my fork carefully, buying time. Just curious about home security, he continued, that practiced smile spreading across his face. You know, with all the break-ins in the area lately. What break-ins? I asked. I'd lived in this neighborhood for 15 years. The most excitement we'd had was Mrs. Henderson's cat getting stuck in a tree last month. Charlie waved his hand dismissively. Oh, you probably don't hear about them. Police keep it quiet to avoid panic. He leaned forward, elbows on my dining table. But a man your age, living alone in a house this size, you must have some serious security measures. Lauren shifted uncomfortably. Dad's always been careful about locking up. Right, but what about insurance? Charlie's voice grew more insistent. I mean, if something happened to you, God forbid, Lauren would need to know where everything important is kept, wouldn't she? The room felt smaller suddenly. I watched Charlie's face, noting how his pupils dilated slightly when he mentioned my hypothetical demise, how his fingers drummed against the table when I didn't immediately respond. I have everything organized, I said finally. Lauren knows what she needs to know. But does she know about the key? The question hung in the air like smoke. Lauren looked between us, confusion creasing her brow. What key? She asked. Charlie's smile widened. The one in your dad's bedroom drawer. The one that... How do you know about any key in my bedroom? The words came out sharper than I intended. For just a moment, Charlie's mask slipped. I saw something cold and calculating flash across his features before the concerned son-in-law expression returned. I was looking for aspirin last week when my head was killing me, he said smoothly. Lauren told me to check your bathroom cabinet, but I accidentally opened the wrong drawer first. Sorry, didn't mean to invade your privacy. Lauren nodded quickly. I remember that headache. You were really suffering. But I remembered that day too. Charlie had been upstairs for nearly 30 minutes, claiming stomach troubles after dinner, long enough to do more than search randomly for aspirin. The aspirin's in the medicine cabinet, I said quietly. Always has been. Charlie's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Must have been really out of it from the pain. The conversation limped along after that, but Charlie kept circling back. Questions about my bank, about who else had keys to the house, about my daily routines. Each query felt like fingers probing a wound, testing for weakness. When dinner finally ended, Lauren jumped up to clear the dishes. I'll handle cleanup tonight, Dad. You cooked? I don't mind, I said, already stacking plates. It was my routine, my way of processing the day's events. Tonight, I especially needed the familiar rhythm of washing and drying. Come on, honey, Charlie said to Lauren, his hand already on her shoulder. Let your dad handle his kitchen. We should get some rest. They disappeared upstairs, and I heard their bedroom door close. But as I scrubbed the dinner plates, I kept replaying Charlie's questions. The way he'd known about a key he shouldn't have known existed. The casual mention of my death and Lauren's inheritance. My hands moved automatically. Wash, rinse, dry, while my mind cataloged every red flag I'd ignored over the past 3 weeks. Charlie's unemployment story that never quite added up. His constant interest in my financial situation. The way he studied my house like he was memorizing blueprints. I finished the last glass and hung the dish towel on its hook. The kitchen gleamed under the overhead lights, restored to perfect order. But something fundamental had shifted tonight. The house felt different now, not safer, but exposed. Upstairs, I could hear muffled voices through the walls, then silence. Time to see what other surprises waited for me in my own home. The first thing I noticed climbing the stairs was my bedroom door. It stood slightly ajar, maybe 2 inches of darkness visible through the gap. I stopped on the top step, my hand gripping the banister. That door had been closed when I went down for dinner. I always closed it, a habit from 40 years of living alone, broken only recently by my daughter's presence in the house. But Lauren and Charlie were staying in the guest room down the hall. There was no reason for anyone to be in my bedroom. I stood there for 30 seconds, listening. No sound came from the guest room. No movement anywhere upstairs. Just the familiar settling noises of an old house, and my own heartbeat drumming in my ears. I pushed the door open slowly, waiting for it to creak. It didn't. The hinges were well oiled, silent, but stepping into my private space felt like walking into a crime scene. Everything looked normal at first glance. The bed was still made, corners tight and perfect. My reading glasses sat on the nightstand where I'd left them. The lamp stood at the same angle. But my eyes, trained by decades of methodical living, caught the discrepancies immediately. The closet door hung open exactly 4 inches. I always closed it completely. The slight gap would have bothered me all night. My dresser drawers weren't quite flush anymore. The second drawer from the top, where I kept important papers, had been pushed in carelessly. A corner of manila folder peeked out like a yellow tongue. My stomach clenched. I moved to the dresser, pulling out the drawer fully. The folders inside had been rifled through, returned in approximately the right order, but not exactly. Someone had been thorough, but not careful enough. Insurance papers were mixed with bank statements. My will, normally kept in the back folder, had migrated toward the front, and the small brass key I kept taped under the drawer's lip was gone. I checked twice, running my fingers along the wooden surface where the tape had been. Nothing. The key that opened my safe, the safe Charlie had asked about so casually at dinner, had been discovered and taken. My hands started shaking, not from fear but from rage. This wasn't random. This wasn't opportunistic. Someone had entered my private sanctuary and systematically violated it, searching for specific items. Someone who knew exactly what to look for and where to find it. I moved to the safe, a small but sturdy model, bolted inside my walk-in closet. The digital lock still worked, but that didn't matter anymore. Charlie had the key to the manual override. Standing in my closet, surrounded by decades of accumulated possessions, I felt utterly exposed. How long had he been planning this? How many times had he been in here while Lauren and I were downstairs, cataloging my belongings like items in a store? The violation went deeper than theft. This was personal, intimate. Someone had touched my private papers, had seen my financial records, had handled things meant for no one but me. The careful boundaries I'd built around my life had been crossed with surgical precision. But Charlie had made one crucial mistake. He'd assumed I wouldn't notice, that I was just another oblivious old man, too trusting and too tired to pay attention to details. He was wrong. I closed the dresser drawer carefully, leaving everything exactly as I'd found it. If Charlie thought he was operating in secret, I needed him to keep believing that. Let him think his intrusion had gone undetected. Let him proceed with whatever plan he was hatching. Because now I knew what I was dealing with. This wasn't about unemployment or temporary financial hardship. This was about theft. Premeditated, calculated theft by someone who'd spent weeks studying my routines and vulnerabilities. Someone who was sleeping down the hall with my daughter. I turned off the bedroom light and began getting ready for bed, moving through my normal nighttime routine. But every action felt different now, performed for an invisible audience. Was Charlie listening? Did he know I'd discovered his search? As I pulled back the covers, one thought crystallized in my mind. Tomorrow, I would start gathering evidence. Tonight, I would lie awake and plan. But first, I needed to know exactly what I was up against. Sleep was impossible. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, my mind cycling through the evening's revelations. Every small sound made me tense. The house settling, wind through the trees outside, the faint hum of the refrigerator 2 floors below. At 11:47 p.m., according to my bedside clock, I heard movement downstairs. Soft footsteps crossed the living room floor. Not Lauren's light step, something heavier, more deliberate. Charlie. I remained perfectly still, controlling my breathing, listening as the sounds moved toward the front of the house. Then, barely audible through the old house's thin floors, I heard his voice. Yeah, it's me. Everyone's asleep. A phone call. Charlie was making a phone call at midnight, speaking in whispers he thought no one could hear. I eased myself up in bed, careful not to let the mattress creak. The hardwood floor was cold against my bare feet as I moved closer to the heating vent that connected my bedroom to the living room below. Sometimes sound traveled through the old ductwork in unexpected ways. The old man's definitely loaded. Charlie's voice drifted up, clearer now. I found bank statements, investment portfolios, the whole thing. We're talking serious money here. My blood went cold. We're talking. He wasn't working alone. Tomorrow night, Charlie continued, Lauren's going to her book club meeting. She goes every Tuesday, 7 to 9. Gives us perfect timing. I grabbed my phone from the nightstand, hands trembling as I opened the voice recording app. Whatever came next, I needed evidence. I already have the safe key, Charlie was saying. Grabbed it earlier today while they were having dinner. The old fool keeps everything important in there. Cash, jewelry, probably more bank information. The bastard. I pressed record just as his voice became more animated, more confident. Look, I know you're worried about the timeline, but my gambling debts aren't going away. Those guys aren't exactly patient, if you know what I mean. This has to happen now. Gambling debts. That explained everything. The desperation, the calculated approach, the willingness to betray my daughter's trust. Charlie wasn't just an opportunistic thief. He was a desperate man, backed into a corner by his own stupidity. David's just some lonely old widower. Charlie's voice carried a sneer now. Probably grateful for the company. He has no idea what's coming. Hell, he was asking me about home security at dinner tonight. Practically handed me the information I needed. Rage built in my chest, hot and consuming. The casual dismissal in his voice. The way he reduced me to a stereotype. A easy mark. But I forced myself to stay quiet. To keep recording. The beauty is he'll never suspect family. Even if he figures out something's missing, Lauren will convince him he just misplaced stuff. You know how old people get about their memory? Old people. I was 66, not 96. My memory was sharp enough to remember every word of this conversation. Trust me, by Thursday we'll be clear. I'll tell Lauren we got a job offer in another state. Something urgent. We'll be gone before the old man knows what hit him. Charlie was silent for a moment, listening to whoever was on the other end. Then he laughed, a sound that made my skin crawl. Yeah, well, maybe he should have been more careful about who he let into his house. Life lesson, right? The call ended. I heard Charlie moving around downstairs for another minute, probably checking locks or windows. Then his footsteps on the stairs, careful and quiet. I quickly stopped the recording and slipped my phone under my pillow. The bedroom door was still slightly ajar from his earlier search. I hadn't dared fix it and reveal that I'd noticed. Through the gap, I watched his shadow pass in the hallway. The guest room door opened and closed softly. For a long time after that, I lay in the darkness, processing what I'd learned. Charlie had gambling debts serious enough to involve dangerous people. He had an accomplice. He planned to rob me tomorrow night during Lauren's book club meeting, and he intended to disappear immediately afterward, taking my daughter with him into whatever mess he'd created. The violation of my bedroom suddenly seemed small compared to this larger betrayal. Charlie wasn't just stealing from me. He was using Lauren as cover, manipulating her love and trust to set up his crime. But he'd made a critical error. He'd assumed I was helpless, clueless, just another easy target. He had no idea that I'd spent 30 years as an insurance investigator before retirement, or that I'd dealt with plenty of desperate people trying to outsmart the system. Charlie wanted to play games with an old man? Fine. Let's see how smart he really was. Lying there in the dark, with Charlie's recorded confession on my phone, I found myself thinking back to how this all started. 3 weeks ago, when Lauren's desperate call had shattered my quiet Tuesday morning. I'd been reading the newspaper, coffee growing cold beside me, when my phone rang. Lauren's name on the screen always made me smile, but her voice that day was different, strained, frightened. Dad, I know it's early, but... She'd paused, and I could hear her struggling not to cry. Charlie lost his job last month. We've been trying to manage, but we're behind on the mortgage, and... How far behind? I'd asked immediately, already reaching for my checkbook. 3 months? Dad, I hate to ask, but could we maybe stay with you for a while? Just until Charlie finds something new? The relief in her voice when I said yes had been heartbreaking. My little girl, 32 years old, and too proud to ask for help until she had no choice. Of course she could come home. Of course I'd help. But even then, something had nagged at me about Charlie's situation. He'd worked for the same company for 8 years, Lauren had said. Good employee reviews. The layoffs had been sudden, unexpected. Yet when I'd asked Lauren for details, her answers were vague. Charlie handled the finances, she explained. He was managing the job search. She trusted him to figure it out. I should have pressed harder, should have asked more questions. 3 days later, they'd arrived with a U-Haul truck and too many boxes for a temporary stay. Lauren had hugged me tight on the doorstep, tears in her eyes, whispering thank you over and over. But Charlie had been different, cooler, his handshake firm but brief, his eyes already scanning my house with an intensity that should have alarmed me. Nice place, David, he'd said, walking through my living room like he was appraising it. Must be worth quite a bit in today's market. At the time, I'd chalked it up to natural curiosity. Now I realized he'd been calculating, evaluating, planning. During their first week, I'd tried to make them comfortable, cleared space in the guest closet, adjusted my routines to accommodate 3 people instead of 1. Lauren had settled in easily. She knew the house, knew my habits. But Charlie had asked endless questions about my neighborhood watch schedule, about which neighbors were home during the day, about my banking habits, my shopping routines, whether I kept cash in the house. All perfectly innocent questions from someone trying to adjust to a new living situation. Except they weren't innocent at all. I remembered the morning he'd offered to drive me to the bank. Save you a trip? He'd said. I need to update my address with unemployment anyway. But at the bank he'd lingered near the teller window, watching as I made my deposit. Asked casual questions about my account types, my safety deposit box. Red flags I'd ignored because I wanted to trust my daughter's husband. Because Lauren loved him, and I loved Lauren. The gambling should have been obvious, too. Charlie's phone rang constantly, calls he always took in private, stepping outside or into another room. He'd claimed it was potential employers, networking contacts, but I'd noticed how his mood shifted after these calls. The tension in his shoulders, the way he'd pace afterward. In the mail, financial statements addressed to Charlie had been arriving at my house for 2 weeks. Credit card companies, collection agencies. I'd assumed they were just updating his address after his job loss. Now I understood they were dunning notices, final demands, threats. Lauren knew none of this. She trusted Charlie completely, took his explanations at face value. When he said he was handling their finances, she believed him. When he said the job market was tough, but he had prospects, she supported him. She had no idea her husband was drowning in gambling debt, had no clue that her childhood home was being surveilled like a target. My trusting, loving daughter was being used as the perfect cover for theft. The thought brought me back to the present moment, to my dark bedroom and the weight of Charlie's recorded confession on my phone. In 12 hours, he planned to rob me. In 36 hours, he planned to disappear with Lauren, dragging her into his web of debt and deception. But he'd made one catastrophic miscalculation. He'd assumed I was just a lonely old man, grateful for company and easy to fool. I wasn't lonely. I was careful. I was observant. And I had 30 years of experience dealing with people who thought they were smarter than everyone else. Charlie wanted to steal from me tomorrow night? Fine. Let him try. But he was about to learn that some old men bite back. I woke at 6:30, same as always. The recording on my phone felt like evidence of a nightmare, but the timestamp proved otherwise. 12:47 a.m., Charlie's voice clear as daylight, planning to rob me tonight. Downstairs, I started the coffee maker and began my usual breakfast routine. Eggs, toast, orange juice. Everything precisely as it had been for the past 3 weeks. When Lauren appeared in her robe, yawning and grateful, I smiled warmly. Morning, sweetheart. Sleep well? Like a baby. Thank you again for letting us stay here, Dad. Charlie appeared 20 minutes later, hair still damp from the shower. He looked rested, confident, a man with a plan. Beautiful morning, he said, settling into his chair. What's everyone got planned for today? I set his coffee down carefully. Oh, the usual. Might run some errands later. Charlie's eyes sharpened slightly. What kind of errands? Just odds and ends. Hardware store, maybe the bank. I watched his reaction. A tiny muscle twitched near his left eye. Nothing exciting. The bank? Charlie leaned forward. Everything okay financially? Lauren laughed. Dad's always been paranoid about checking his accounts in person. Old habits. Not paranoid, I corrected mildly. Careful. You can't be too careful these days. Charlie nodded too enthusiastically. Absolutely right. Identity theft, online scams. It's a jungle out there for someone your age. Someone my age. There it was again, that casual dismissal, wrapped in false concern. Speaking of careful, Charlie continued, I've been thinking about your home security. This neighborhood seems pretty quiet, but you never know. It's perfectly safe, Lauren interjected. Dad's lived here 15 years without problems. But Charlie wasn't listening to his wife. His attention stayed locked on me. Still, a man living alone. Valuable things in the house? It pays to be prepared. You mentioned that safe upstairs. Is that where you keep important documents? I took a slow sip of coffee, considering my response. Some things, yes. What about cash? I mean, if the banks went down or something happened, it's smart to have emergency funds readily available. The audacity was breathtaking. He was sitting at my breakfast table, eating food I'd prepared, asking me to inventory my assets for his convenience. I have what I need, I said simply. Charlie tried a different approach. You mentioned being a heavy sleeper last week. That's good. I worry about older folks who can't get proper rest. I hadn't mentioned any such thing, but I nodded anyway. Oh yes, once I'm out, I'm dead to the world, especially lately. I've been so tired in the evenings. That's normal at your age, Charlie said. Your body needs more rest. Lauren shot him a look. Charlie, that's rude. No, he's right, I said quickly. I usually take something to help me sleep. Knock me right out until morning. Charlie's posture relaxed noticeably. Perfect. Let him think I'd be unconscious and helpless tonight. Well, I should let you folks plan your day, I said, standing to clear the dishes. I'll probably turn in early tonight. All this family activity has me more tired than usual. That sounds perfect, Dad, Lauren said. You deserve rest. Charlie helped carry plates to the kitchen, and I caught him glancing toward the stairs, toward my bedroom, calculating, planning. You know, he said casually, I might stay up late tonight, watch some TV in the living room. I'm a bit of a night owl. Of course he was. I smiled and nodded. Make yourself comfortable. The remote's on the coffee table. After breakfast, Charlie announced he needed to make some calls about job prospects. Lauren decided to organize their belongings in the guest room. I had my window. I think I'll run those errands now, I told them. You two enjoy some quiet time together. As I backed out of the driveway, I saw Charlie watching from the upstairs window. Not the guest room window, my bedroom window. My hands tightened on the steering wheel. Tonight couldn't come soon enough. The hardware store was my first stop. I needed supplies, but more importantly, I needed to think through every detail of what was coming. Charlie had made his intentions crystal clear at breakfast. Tonight, while I supposedly slept deeply with the help of medication, he planned to enter my bedroom, locate the key he'd spotted weeks ago, and open my safe. Simple. Clean. The perfect crime against a trusting old man. Except the key wasn't there anymore. I'd moved it at 5 this morning after lying awake since Charlie's phone call. The small brass key now sat safely in my kitchen junk drawer, buried beneath rubber bands and twist ties. Charlie could search my bedroom dresser until his fingers bled. He'd find nothing. But that wasn't enough. I wanted him caught red-handed, humiliated, exposed for exactly what he was. I wanted evidence so clear that even Lauren couldn't deny her husband's true nature. In the hardware store's party supply aisle, I found what I needed. A small confetti cannon, the kind used for gender reveal parties. Spring-loaded, designed to create maximum mess with minimum effort. Perfect. I also picked up a bag of ultrafine glitter, the kind that sticks to everything and never quite comes off. Silver and gold, because if Charlie wanted to be a thief, he should look the part. Back home, I found the house empty. A note from Lauren on the kitchen counter. Gone grocery shopping with Charlie. Back by 2 p.m. Love you. Perfect timing. I had 3 hours. In my basement workshop, I carefully dismantled the confetti cannon. The mechanism was beautifully simple, a spring-loaded plunger that would trigger when sufficient pressure was applied. I replaced the harmless paper confetti with my glitter mixture, adding just enough to coat someone thoroughly without causing injury. The tricky part was calibration. I needed the device to trigger when Charlie opened my dresser drawer and reached inside, but not from casual contact. After several tests with a wooden spoon, I found the right sensitivity. Installation required precision. I placed the modified cannon inside my dresser drawer, positioning it so the trigger would activate when someone reached toward the back, exactly where the key had been hidden. To anyone glancing inside, it would look like normal drawer contents. A few old photos, some buttons, miscellaneous items. But reach in with purpose, search with intent, and surprise. I tested the setup 3 times, using a ruler to simulate Charlie's searching motion. Each test triggered perfectly, sending a cloud of glitter exactly where an intruder's face and hands would be. The device reset easily, ready for its real performance. Next came the key placement deception. I positioned a dummy key in plain sight near the front of the drawer, an old luggage key that looked similar enough to fool someone in a hurry. Charlie would spot it immediately, reach for it confidently, and trigger my surprise. The beauty was in the psychology. Charlie expected stealth, silence, success. He'd budgeted for a quick, quiet theft. He hadn't planned for a glitter explosion that would mark him as clearly as a die pack marks bank robbers. By 1:45 p.m., everything was in place. The drawer looked innocent and normal. The trap was armed and ready. Charlie would walk into my bedroom tonight, expecting to find a helpless victim. Instead, he'd find 24-karat justice. I heard car doors slamming in the driveway. Lauren and Charlie returning from their shopping trip, probably feeling domestic and normal. Charlie had no idea his crime scene had become a trap. I closed the dresser drawer gently and headed downstairs to greet them, wearing my best grandfatherly smile. Tonight was going to be very interesting. I need to run out for a quick errand, I announced after lunch. Won't be long. Lauren looked up from unpacking groceries. Need help with anything, Dad? Just picking up something at the electronics store. You two relax. You've done enough shopping for one day. Charlie barely glanced up from his phone, but I caught the flicker of interest in his eyes. The old man running errands alone, leaving the house unguarded, probably confirming his mental map of my routine. The Best Buy clerk was a helpful young man named Marcus, who didn't blink when I explained I wanted a security camera for my bedroom. "A lot of break-ins in your area?" he asked. "Something like that. I need something small, with good night vision, and it needs to be wireless." Marcus showed me several options. I settled on a compact model that connected to my smartphone, with motion detection and 8 hours of battery life. The camera was smaller than a deck of cards and came with magnetic mounting options. "You'll want to test the placement," Marcus advised. "The app lets you see exactly what the camera sees in real time." Perfect. I paid cash and drove home, the camera sitting in its box beside me like a secret weapon. Back home, I found Charlie and Lauren watching television in the living room. They looked comfortable, domestic, like a normal couple staying with Lauren's father, not thieves preparing for a heist. "Just going to rest for a few minutes," I told them, heading upstairs. "All this running around has me beat." In my bedroom, I closed the door and got to work. The camera needed to capture Charlie's approach to the dresser, his reaction to opening the drawer, and the glitter explosion that would follow. But it also needed to remain completely hidden. I tested several positions using the smartphone app. On top of my bookshelf, the angle was wrong. Behind my lamp, too obvious. Finally, I found the perfect spot, nestled between books on my nightstand, angled to capture both the dresser and the center of the room. The magnetic mount held perfectly, and the camera's black casing blended with the book spines. Unless someone was specifically looking for surveillance equipment, it was invisible. I spent 20 minutes adjusting the angle through the app, ensuring optimal coverage. The motion detection was sensitive enough to activate when someone entered the room, but not so sensitive that normal settling or outside noise would trigger false recordings. Battery life was crucial. The camera needed to last from now until Charlie made his move, potentially 8 to 10 hours. I switched it to motion-activated mode to conserve power, then tested the night vision capability by turning off the lights. The infrared image was crystal clear. Charlie's face would be perfectly visible when he triggered my trap. I also tested the recording function, making sure the audio was clear enough to capture any words Charlie might speak during his crime. If he said anything incriminating, and desperate people often talk to themselves, I'd have that evidence too. The setup was elegant in its simplicity. Charlie would enter my room expecting darkness and silence. Instead, he'd be filmed from the moment he crossed the threshold. The camera would capture his search, his discovery of the dummy key, his reaching into the drawer, and the spectacular glitter explosion that followed. Visual evidence, audio evidence, and physical evidence, all in one beautiful package. I repositioned a few books to better camouflage the camera, then stood back to admire my work. Everything looked normal, innocent, just an old man's bedroom, ready for a peaceful night's sleep. Downstairs, I could hear Lauren and Charlie talking quietly, planning their evening, no doubt. Charlie was probably calculating the hours until his theft window opened. He had no idea the window had become a trapdoor. I checked my phone one final time. The camera feed was clear, the recording function active, the battery showing full charge. Everything was ready. Tonight, Charlie would finally show his true colors, and thanks to modern technology, every moment would be preserved in high-definition detail. Let the games begin. Dinner passed peacefully, with Lauren chatting about neighborhood changes and Charlie checking his phone frequently. I played my part perfectly, the tired grandfather, ready for an early bedtime after a busy day. By 8 o'clock, we'd settled in the living room. Lauren curled up with a book while I claimed my usual armchair, making a show of rubbing my temples. "Long day," I murmured. "Think I'll turn in early tonight." Charlie looked up from his phone immediately. "Actually, David, I was hoping we could share a drink first. You know, father and son-in-law bonding time." The suggestion came out of nowhere, but his tone was carefully casual. Too casual. "That's sweet," Lauren said, not looking up from her book. "You two should spend more time together." "I was thinking about that bottle of Macallan I saw in your kitchen," Charlie continued. "Premium stuff, perfect for a nightcap." I kept my expression neutral, but internally I was fascinated. Charlie had been planning this conversation probably since breakfast. The timing, the suggestion, the specific mention of expensive whiskey. Nothing was accidental. "I appreciate the thought," I said, "but I'm on medication that doesn't mix well with alcohol." Charlie's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. "Come on, one small glass won't hurt. We're practically family." "Really, I should avoid it entirely." "Dad's right," Lauren chimed in. "The doctor was very specific about his blood pressure medication." But Charlie wasn't giving up easily. "What about just a toast, then? A tiny sip to celebrate." He paused, searching for something to celebrate. "To family." The persistence was telling. A normal person would have accepted my first refusal, graciously. Charlie was pushing because he needed me to drink something specific, something that would ensure I slept deeply tonight. "I tell you what," he said, standing up. "I'll pour myself a glass, and we can just sit and talk. No pressure for you to drink." He disappeared into the kitchen before I could object. I heard cabinet doors opening, the clink of glass. When he returned, he carried 2 tumblers, one with amber liquid, one empty. "Changed my mind," he said, settling back onto the couch. "Poured you just a splash. For the toast. Barely a teaspoon." He held out the second glass. The whiskey inside caught the lamplight, looking innocent enough. But I'd investigated insurance fraud for 30 years, and desperate people always got sloppy. "Charlie, I really can't." "One tiny sip," he insisted. "Lauren, tell your father one sip won't kill him." Lauren looked between us, sensing tension she couldn't identify. "If Dad says no, maybe you should respect that." Charlie's jaw tightened. For just a moment, his mask slipped completely. I saw frustration, calculation, and something close to panic flicker across his features. "You know what?" I said, standing carefully. "I'm more tired than I thought. I think I'll take one of those sleeping pills and call it a night." Charlie's posture changed immediately. "Sleeping pills? Doctor prescribed them last month. Powerful stuff. Knocks me out completely. I'll be dead to the world until morning." Relief flooded Charlie's face. "That sounds perfect. You need your rest." "Sweet dreams, Dad," Lauren said, kissing my cheek. "See you in the morning." I made a production of climbing the stairs slowly, pausing to grip the railing like an old man struggling with fatigue. At the top, I turned back. Don't stay up too late, you two. Charlie, help yourself to anything in the kitchen. Thanks, David. Sleep well. In my bedroom, I went through the motions of preparing for sleep, changing clothes, brushing teeth, turning down the bed. But I also double-checked my camera positioning and confirmed the glitter trap was ready. I turned off my bedroom light and settled onto the bed fully clothed, positioning myself where I could see the hallway through my slightly open door. Downstairs, I could hear the television playing softly, Charlie and Lauren talking in hushed voices. Then Lauren's footsteps on the stairs, the guest room door closing. Charlie stayed downstairs, waiting, probably watching the clock, calculating how long it would take for my sleeping pill to take full effect. I checked my phone. 9:47 p.m. The camera showed my empty bedroom in perfect night vision detail. The trap was set. The stage was prepared. All I had to do now was wait for my son-in-law to reveal his true nature. At 2:43 a.m., I heard the first creak on the stairs. I'd been lying motionless for hours, positioned so I could see the hallway through my barely opened door. My phone showed the camera feed in real time. My empty bedroom waiting in perfect night vision clarity. Charlie moved like a professional burglar, avoiding the spots on the stairs that groaned under weight. He'd learned my house's quirks during his 3-week residency, mapping every sound that might betray his presence. The hallway floorboard outside my room whispered under his weight. Then silence. He was listening, making sure his sleeping pill story had worked its magic. I controlled my breathing, keeping it deep and regular. The performance of my life, with my daughter's future hanging in the balance. My door handle turned with glacial slowness. Charlie's silhouette appeared in the doorway, backlit by the faint hallway nightlight. He stood frozen for 30 seconds, watching my supposedly unconscious form. Satisfied I was deeply sedated, he slipped inside. Charlie moved with predatory confidence now, believing himself invisible and untouchable. His dark clothing made him nearly invisible, but I could track his movement by sound and the shifting shadows. He approached my dresser with the certainty of a man who'd planned every step. 3 weeks of reconnaissance had taught him exactly where to find what he needed. The key that would unlock my safe, my security, my life savings. I watched him position himself directly in front of the dresser. His hands reached for the second drawer, the one containing my hidden key and his spectacular surprise. The drawer slid open smoothly. For a split second, Charlie's posture radiated triumph. He'd found his target, reached inside confidently, fingers seeking the brass key that would solve all his problems. Then my confetti bomb exploded. Boom! The sound was magnificent, like a party favor crossed with a small cannon. Silver and gold glitter erupted in a glorious cloud, coating Charlie from head to toe in sparkling confetti. The explosion echoed through the house like celebratory gunfire. Charlie stumbled backward, cursing violently as glitter settled in his hair, on his clothes, across his shocked face. He looked like he'd been attacked by a craft store explosion, transformed into a walking disco ball. "What the hell?" he gasped, brushing frantically at the glitter that clung to everything. I performed my awakening with Academy Award precision, sitting up with startled confusion. "What on earth?" I called out, reaching for my bedside lamp. "What was that noise?" Light flooded the room, revealing Charlie in all his glittering glory. He stood frozen beside my dresser, covered head to toe in festive confetti, holding the dummy key I'd placed as bait. "Charlie?" I blinked with theatrical bewilderment. "What are you doing in my bedroom?" He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. Glitter fell from his hair like holiday snow. I heard a noise," he stammered. "Thought someone might be breaking in." "Breaking in?" I glanced around my room with apparent confusion. "And you ended up sparkling?" Charlie looked down at himself, finally grasping the full extent of his transformation. He resembled a rejected Christmas ornament, silver and gold glitter clinging to every surface of his body. There was some kind of trap, he said weakly. "Trap?" I tilted my head innocently. "In my bedroom?" From down the hall came the sound of feet hitting the floor. Lauren, awakened by the explosion, was coming to investigate. Charlie's eyes widened with panic. "How do you explain being covered in craft supplies while robbing your father-in-law at 3 a.m.? "David, what's happening?" Lauren's voice carried worry and growing alertness. Charlie opened his mouth desperately, but no believable explanation emerged. He was caught, literally red-handed, or rather glitter-handed, in the act of betraying our family. I allowed myself the smallest smile as footsteps approached down the hallway. Justice, it turned out, was beautifully sparkly. "Dad? Are you okay?" Lauren appeared in the doorway, tying her robe belt with quick, worried movements. Then she stopped dead, taking in the scene before her. Me sitting up in bed, apparently confused and concerned. Charlie standing beside my open dresser drawer, covered from head to toe in glittering confetti, like he'd been dipped in a craft store. "What in the world?" Lauren's voice caught. "Charlie? Why do you look like a Christmas decoration?" Charlie's mouth opened and closed soundlessly. Glitter drifted from his hair with each movement, settling on my bedroom carpet like festive snow. "There was a noise," he said finally, his voice strained. "I came to check on your father." "At 3 in the morning?" Lauren's tone sharpened. "And you ended up covered in... what is that, glitter?" "Some kind of security device," Charlie said quickly, brushing frantically at his sparkling clothes. "It went off when I opened the drawer." Lauren's eyes moved from Charlie to the open dresser drawer, then to me. "Dad, do you have security devices in your furniture?" I maintained my expression of elderly confusion. "Not that I know of, sweetheart. I was sound asleep until that explosion woke me up." "Then why were you in his dresser drawer, Charlie?" Lauren's voice carried a new edge I'd never heard before. Protective. Suspicious. Charlie's story began crumbling in real time. "I was looking for something to help you sleep. You were tossing and turning, and I thought David might have some extra sleep aids." "Sleep aids?" Lauren's eyebrows lifted. "In his bedroom dresser?" "I thought... maybe..." Charlie gestured weakly at the drawer, sending more glitter cascading to the floor. "Charlie," I said gently, "my medications are in the bathroom cabinet. They always have been." The silence that followed felt heavy with implications. Lauren looked between us, her expression shifting from confusion to something harder. "So let me understand this," she said slowly. "You left our bed at 3 in the morning, came into my father's bedroom while he was sleeping, and opened his private dresser drawer, looking for medicine you knew wasn't there?" "It's not like that." "Then what is it like?" Lauren's voice rose slightly. "Because from where I'm standing, it looks like my husband was going through my father's personal belongings in the middle of the night." Charlie's desperation grew more visible. "Lauren, you have to understand. I was just trying to help." "Help with what, exactly?" I interjected mildly. "What were you hoping to find in that drawer?" Charlie's eyes darted between us. The question hung in the air like an accusation. He swallowed hard. "I was confused, disoriented. I thought I heard someone breaking in." "Breaking in?" Lauren repeated flatly. "So you decided to search my father's bedroom furniture?" "I wasn't searching." "Then what do you call opening his dresser drawer?" Charlie's glitter-covered hands clenched into fists. "Why are you interrogating me like this? I'm your husband." The defensive anger in his voice seemed to hit Lauren like a physical blow. She took a step back, and I saw something change in her expression, the last traces of trust beginning to crumble. "You're right," she said quietly. "You are my husband, which is why I'm asking you to explain why you're standing in my father's bedroom at 3 in the morning, covered in craft supplies, with your hand in his private drawer." Charlie looked trapped, cornered by the weight of his own implausible explanations. Glitter continued to fall from his clothes like evidence of his guilt. "I can explain everything," he said desperately. "Then please do." Lauren crossed her arms. "Because right now I'm very confused about what my husband was doing in here." I watched my daughter's face and saw the exact moment her protective instincts shifted from Charlie to me. The moment she began to see the situation not as a misunderstanding, but as a threat to her father. Charlie must have seen it too, because his next words came out edged with panic. "Lauren, you have to trust me." But trust, once broken by glitter and lies, isn't easily repaired. Lauren's eyes stayed fixed on Charlie, and I could see her mental wheels turning, processing, analyzing, drawing conclusions that her heart didn't want to accept. "Charlie," she said slowly, "I need you to tell me the truth. Right now. What were you really doing in my father's bedroom?" Charlie opened his mouth, but I knew the moment had come. My daughter deserved better than watching her husband spin more lies. She deserved the truth, no matter how much it would hurt. "Lauren," I said gently, reaching for my phone on the nightstand, "there's something you need to hear." Charlie's face went white beneath the glitter. "David, don't." "Don't what?" Lauren's voice sharpened dangerously. "Don't what, Charlie?" I found the recording from 2 nights ago and held up my phone. "Sweetheart, I recorded something last night. A phone conversation. I think you should listen to it." "No," Charlie said quickly. "Lauren, whatever he thinks he heard—" "Be quiet," Lauren snapped, never taking her eyes off me. "Dad, play it." I pressed play. Charlie's voice filled the room, clear and damning. "Yeah, it's me. Everyone's asleep. The old man's definitely loaded. I found bank statements, investment portfolios, the whole thing. We're talking serious money here." Lauren's face went completely still. Her eyes widened as she listened to her husband's voice discussing my finances with a stranger. "Tomorrow night, Lauren's going to her book club meeting. She goes every Tuesday, 7 to 9. Gives us perfect timing." "Stop it," Charlie said desperately. "Lauren, I can explain." "Shut up." Lauren's voice was deadly quiet. "Just shut up and let me listen." Charlie's voice continued from the phone. "I already have the safe key. Grabbed it earlier today while they were having dinner. The old fool keeps everything important in there. Cash, jewelry, probably more bank information." Lauren's hand flew to her mouth. She stared at Charlie like she was seeing a stranger. "Look, I know you're worried about the timeline, but my gambling debts aren't going away. Those guys aren't exactly patient, if you know what I mean." "Gambling debts?" Lauren whispered. "What gambling debts?" The recording continued. "David's just some lonely old widower. Probably grateful for the company. He has no idea what's coming." I watched my daughter's face crumble as she heard her husband's casual dismissal of me, his assessment of my vulnerability, his cold calculation of how to exploit my kindness. The beauty is, he'll never suspect family. Even if he figures out something's missing, Lauren will convince him he just misplaced stuff. You know how old people get about their memory. Lauren made a sound like she'd been physically struck, her husband's voice discussing how to use her trust to cover his theft of her father. "Trust me, by Thursday we'll be clear. I'll tell Lauren we got a job offer in another state. Something urgent. We'll be gone before the old man knows what hit him." I stopped the recording. The silence that followed was deafening. Lauren stared at Charlie, tears streaming down her face. "Gambling debts?" she whispered. "You were going to rob my father?" "Lauren, listen to me. You called him a lonely old fool." Her voice broke. "You were going to steal from him and then disappear, taking me with you as your cover story." Charlie tried to step toward her, but she backed away like he was dangerous. "How much?" she demanded. "How much do you owe?" "It doesn't matter." "How much?" Charlie's shoulders sagged. 47,000. Lauren's legs seemed to give out. She sank against the doorframe, staring at the man she'd married. "You've been lying to me for months," she said, "about everything. The job loss, our finances, why we really needed to stay here. I was trying to protect you. By planning to rob my father?" Lauren's voice rose to a shout. "By using me as your alibi, while you destroyed the man who raised me?" Charlie tried once more. "Lauren, we can work this out." "No." Lauren straightened and I saw steel enter her spine. "No, we can't. You planned to victimize my father. You called him names. You were going to let me believe he was losing his memory while you stole from him." She looked at Charlie with disgust. "Get out." "Lauren, get out of my father's house. Now." For the first time since I'd known him, Charlie had nothing to say. Charlie stood there for another 10 seconds, glitter still falling from his hair like tarnished snow. Then something in Lauren's expression, pure protective fury, finally convinced him that his marriage was over. "This isn't finished," he said, his voice turning ugly. "Half of everything we own is mine. I'll get my share." "You mean half of our debt?" Lauren's voice was ice cold. "Because that's all we have, Charlie. Debt. Gambling debt that I knew nothing about. I'll fight you in court." "With what money?" Lauren stepped closer to him, and I was proud to see she wasn't backing down. "You just admitted you owe $47,000 to dangerous people. What exactly are you going to fight me with?" Charlie's bravado crumbled. He looked at me with something approaching hatred. "This is your fault, old man. You turned her against me." "No," Lauren said firmly. "You did that yourself. When you decided to plan a robbery instead of asking for help? When you called my father names? When you lied to me for months? Charlie tried one last desperate approach. Lauren, we're married. We took vows. You broke those vows when you planned to commit a felony against my family. Lauren pointed toward the door. Get your things and get out. Now. I watched Charlie realize that his con was truly over. No more manipulation, no more lies, no more playing the victim. Lauren had heard his own words condemn him. He left the room without another word, tracking glitter through my house like a trail of evidence. We could hear him in the guest room, throwing clothes into bags with bitter violence. Lauren sank into my bedside chair, looking exhausted. Dad, I'm so sorry, she whispered. I brought him into your home. I put you in danger. Sweetheart, you couldn't have known. I should have seen the signs, the phone calls, the way he asked questions about your money. She looked up at me with tear-filled eyes. How long have you known? Since the night before last. I heard that phone call and knew I had to protect both of us. Lauren managed a weak smile. The glitter bomb was genius. I wanted him caught red-handed, or should I say glitter-handed. That earned me a genuine laugh, even through her tears. Charlie reappeared in the doorway with 2 hastily packed bags, still sparkling like a defeated party favor. Lauren, leave your key on the kitchen counter, she said without looking at him. Don't contact me. My lawyer will contact yours. Charlie opened his mouth to argue, then seemed to realize the futility. He walked away, and a minute later we heard the front door slam. Lauren and I sat in silence for a few moments, listening to Charlie's car start and drive away into the night. Can I stay here? Lauren asked quietly, just until I figure things out. Sweetheart, this is your home for as long as you want it. 3 months later, I was making coffee when Lauren came downstairs, dressed for her new job at the local library. She'd taken to morning routines with the same methodical precision I'd always admired. Morning, Dad. Morning, sweetheart. Sleep well? Like a baby. She poured herself coffee and settled at the kitchen table. Any regrets about the great glitter trap of March? I chuckled. Only that I didn't film his face when it exploded. Lauren's divorce had been finalized 2 weeks ago. Charlie had contested nothing. Hard to argue property division when you're facing potential criminal charges and $47,000 in gambling debt. Library busy today? I asked. Story time at 10, then I'm helping Mrs. Patterson research her genealogy? Lauren smiled. I love it there. Quiet, peaceful, full of people who actually appreciate books. She paused at the door. Thank you, Dad, for protecting me, for handling everything so elegantly. Thank you for trusting me when it mattered most. After she left, I sat in my kitchen, sipping coffee and reading the newspaper. The house felt peaceful in a way it hadn't for months. No tension, no lies, no one calculating how to exploit my kindness. My phone buzzed with a text from Lauren. Forgot to mention, Mrs. Henderson asked if you'd help her install a security system. Apparently word got around about your innovative home protection methods. I laughed out loud. Maybe I should patent the confetti bomb approach to home security. Outside, spring was settling over Coeur d'Alene. My neighborhood remained quiet and safe, just as it had been before Charlie's brief invasion of our lives. Sometimes justice comes from courtrooms and police. Sometimes it comes from trusting your instincts, setting careful traps, and letting people reveal their true natures. And sometimes justice sparkles. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.